In a world where we often feel disconnected, there are moments that remind us of the power of kindness. This is the story of a man, an officer named Michael, whose life was forever changed by two little girls he met one cold night. As he walked home after a long shift, the last thing Michael expected was to find two young sisters rummaging through a trash can in a dark alley. Their eyes, filled with fear and exhaustion, mirrored the pain of a world that had abandoned them. But what happened next was not just an act of compassion, it was a turning point, not only for the girls but for Michael as well. These two sisters, Leah and Lila, had known nothing but neglect and survival. But with one simple act of kindness, Michael showed them that their lives could be different. In a society that often ignores the most vulnerable, Michael made a choice to stand up, to protect, and to give them something they had never known: a future. This story isn't just about a man rescuing children. It's about the ripple effect that one act of kindness can create. It's about what happens when we decide to see those around us, to truly care, and to make a difference, no matter how small or difficult that difference may seem. At Acts of Kindness Stories, we believe that the power of kindness can change the world. Stay with us to witness how Michael's decision to protect two abandoned children didn't just change their lives, but his own as well. Because in the end, kindness is the true key to transforming lives. The weight of the world seemed to rest on Officer Michael Thompson's shoulders as he walked down the quiet, empty streets of Chicago after a long, exhausting shift. The cold wind cut through his coat, but it was the deep, restless thoughts in his mind that chilled him the most. He was just trying to get home. What he didn't expect was that this night would change the course of his life forever. As he neared a dark alley, something unusual caught his attention: a faint rustling sound. At first, he assumed it was just a stray animal searching for food, but then he heard something that froze him in place: the soft, trembling sobs of children. He stood still for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. There were children in this alley, at this hour? His heart skipped a beat. Michael's instincts as an officer told him to act, but it was something deeper, something more personal, that pushed him forward. He stepped into the alley, the shadows swallowing him whole as the dim streetlights flickered overhead. And then, through the darkness, he saw them. Two young girls, no older than 5 or 6, hunched over a trash can, desperately searching for scraps of food. Their clothes were torn, their faces gaunt from hunger, and their eyes, wide and wary, held the kind of fear that no child should ever know. They were both barefoot, their small feet bruised and red from the biting cold. Michael's chest tightened as he watched them, the image searing itself into his mind. He wanted to help, but how could he reach them? Would they trust him? He took a deep breath, knowing he had to be careful. "Hey kids," he said softly, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm a police officer. You don't need to be afraid. I just want to help." The older girl, Lila, jerked back, pulling her younger sister Leah with her. "No, don't come near us," she shouted, her voice filled with fear. Michael raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to arrest you. I just want to make sure you're okay. You're hungry, right?" The two girls exchanged a look, their eyes filled with distrust and uncertainty. But Michael's sincerity seemed to break through their fear, just enough for the older one to inch closer. She hesitated, but then she took the granola bar he offered her, breaking it in half and giving it to her sister first. It was a small moment, but it was the beginning of something bigger than Michael could have ever imagined. Michael stood there for a while, just watching them, trying to process what he was witnessing. These girls were alone. Alone in the cold, abandoned by a system that should have protected them. His heart ached for them, and a decision began to form in his mind. As they ate, Michael tried to offer them some comfort. "I can take you somewhere safe," he said gently. "You don't have to stay here anymore." The younger girl, Leah, looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where will you take us?" Michael crouched down, lowering himself to their level. "To a place where you don't have to worry about food or the cold. I promise." It was in that moment, as the two girls sat there, still unsure but a little less frightened, that Michael realized something. This wasn't just a case he would handle and forget. This wasn't just another night shift for him. This was his life changing. In a single decision, he had already started to change theirs. But even as he made that choice to help them, he knew it wouldn't be easy. Helping them meant challenging not just his job, but everything he thought he knew about his life. The next few hours felt like an emotional whirlwind. Michael called for an ambulance, then brought the girls into his patrol car to keep them warm. They didn't speak much, but the silence between them held an unspoken connection. As the ambulance sped them to the hospital, Michael knew that something inside him had shifted. He wasn't just a police officer on duty anymore. He was a protector, a father figure, even if he didn't know it yet. The doctors took the girls into their care, and Michael stayed by their side, watching as they were examined. The reality of what he had stumbled into hit him hard. The girls were malnourished, dehydrated, and traumatized. Their wounds weren't just physical. They were emotional scars that no child should ever carry. But through it all, Michael remained by their side, never wavering. He promised them he would be there, and he intended to keep that promise. That night, as he sat next to their beds, he felt an overwhelming urge to protect them. But it was more than just that. It was a bond forming between them, something stronger than duty. They needed him, and somehow he knew that he needed them too. As the days passed, Michael found himself returning to the hospital every day to check on Leah and Lila. He learned more about their lives, how they had been abandoned by their parents, passed through foster homes, and left to fend for themselves in the streets. But as he sat with them, talking and comforting them, he began to see something in their eyes that he hadn't seen before: hope. Still, there was a lingering question in Michael's mind. What would he do now? He had started something by offering them his help, but how far was he willing to go? Could he really take on the responsibility of raising two young girls? He knew he wasn't prepared to be a father. He had no experience, no clue where to start. But what he did have was a heart full of determination. He couldn't let them fall back into the system. He couldn't turn his back on them now. So he made a decision: he would adopt them. The decision wasn't easy. There were complications, of course. The process of adoption was long, difficult, and required a lot of paperwork. But Michael didn't care about any of that. He cared about Leah and Lila. He cared about giving them a future, one filled with love, safety, and stability. And he wasn't going to back down. But the challenges were only beginning. Michael's decision didn't come without its own set of obstacles. For one, his fiancée, Monica, was not on the same page. She struggled with the idea of adopting children, especially ones from such a difficult background. They had plans, big plans, a future that didn't include unexpected changes. But Michael knew in his heart that he couldn't walk away from Leah and Lila, not after everything they had been through. There were other hurdles too. The police department, Michael's co-workers, and even his friends questioned his decision. Some were supportive, but others, those who had never seen the same things Michael had seen, who hadn't experienced the same connections, didn't understand. They saw it as a complicated, risky choice. But none of that mattered to Michael. He continued his journey with Leah and Lila, attending every interview, filling out every form, and following the difficult process of becoming their legal father. He had to prove to the world and to himself that he could provide for them, that he could be the father they needed. And as he did, he also found himself growing stronger, more confident in his new role as their protector. Over time, Leah and Lila began to trust Michael more. They settled into their new life, and even though the scars from their past would never fully disappear, they were no longer alone. They had someone who loved them, someone who would never abandon them. And for Michael, that was everything. As Michael continued to care for Leah and Lila, the transformation was undeniable. The fear that once gripped their small hearts was gradually replaced with hope. Every smile, every step forward was a victory. Not just for them, but for Michael, who had chosen to take on a responsibility that most would shy away from. He wasn't just changing their lives, they were changing his too. He realized that sometimes The most profound moments of growth happen when we step outside our comfort zone and choose to act from a place of compassion. And as time went on, Michael's journey wasn't just about providing a roof over their heads. It was about giving them a future. The kind of future where their potential could thrive, where the scars of their past were acknowledged but didn't define them. Leah and Lila were no longer alone. They had a family that saw them, loved them, and would always stand by them. For Michael, this was more than just a decision, it was a calling. And he knew he was doing exactly what he was meant to do. Their story is a reminder that small acts of kindness can create waves of change. A simple decision to help can ripple out and affect not only the lives of others but also your own. When we choose compassion over indifference, when we stand up for what's right, we can make the world a better place, one life at a time. If this story touched you, made you reflect on the power of kindness, or sparked a desire to make a difference, don't keep it to yourself. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Hit the like button, drop a comment below, and let us know your thoughts. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Acts of Kindness Stories, because we're just getting started. Our goal is to reach 10,000 subscribers and keep sharing these powerful stories that show how one person's kindness can change the world. Together we can spread love, one act at a time. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us.